You're on.
All right, are we ready? All right. I'll try to speak loud enough for everybody to hear me in the back. If you have some issues or if I drone off, just let me know and I'll try to speak louder again. Full disclosure, I'm at the tail end of a long work day. So I'm going to do my very best to be concise and coherent and make complete sentences, but if I jumble something up, like just know that's probably why, because I've been here for a while today. I like to kick things like this off with just a really brief introduction to who I am, what I do, and why I do it. I think it provides some context for the hands-on demonstration and kind of what I discuss in that process. So I try to keep this short, concise, informative. But if you have questions as I go through, feel free to interrupt. I have not looked at this since the last time I did this, which has been since before I moved here, so hopefully I remember all the slides. So yes, my name's Kennedy. I'm the Clay Studio Manager here at the Craft Center at North Carolina State. I've been here a little over a year. This is part of my pack. My wife, we have chickens, we have several dogs, and just one cat now, but they're a big part of my life, a huge part of my life. My wife is an amazing artist, a really wonderful human. I still think it's super cool. She lets me be her husband. Totally blows my mind. So most everything that I do and try to do, I do for the community that I work within and the students and the community members, and I do it for my pack. So that's kind of the driving force behind a lot of decisions that I make. I came here from San Antonio, Texas, where I worked at the Southwest School of Art. I was a faculty member and the Clay Studio Manager there. And then for a short time, I worked for the University of Texas at San Antonio before coming to NC State. This is a picture of the campus at SSA. It's this beautiful late 1800s, kind of like Spanish colonial-esque campus right on the river in downtown San Antonio. But I have my roots in North Carolina. I grew up in Carolina Beach, Curie Beach, on Pleasure Island. So definitely North Carolina has a soft spot in my heart. It's really nice to be back. First time ever living in the middle. I lived in the coast, and I spent about 9 years living in the mountains between going to Appalachian State and then kicking around in the high country area for a while. So those two landscapes and now the South Texas landscape, those three things play a huge influence in the work that I make and the way I think about clay, I think about making, I think about objects in general. I take a lot of inspiration. Most of my work is some rooted in some particular landscape at some point. It may be a color, it may be a texture, it may be overall experience, a hiking trip, something, but I draw from nature in pretty some form or fashion everything that I do. I'm really interested in transitional spaces. So like when the thing stops being what it is and it starts being the next thing, and like what happens, right? So where the ocean meets the beach, where the valley ends and the side of the mountain begins, like what happens in those liminal spaces, right? Where it's ambiguous, it's not clearly defined. I find that in-between space really interesting. And so it influences a lot of the work that I make. So the last image that you saw is a scene, it's in northern New Mexico, it's called Williams Lake. And so then it usually takes a little while of kicking around in the brain space, but it comes out somewhere in the work later on. And so I worked on a series of pieces where I was kind of thinking about that profile a little bit of the mountain, thinking about reflection, thinking about light. So a lot of the times I work in I'll make several things in a series, and I like to think about them as like kind of a composition as a whole. Obviously, it's a cup. You could put something in it, you know, that doesn't have to live with all the other cups, but at least in the process of making it, I like to think about it as one continuous composition, one continuous landscape. So this is another example of that. I like to think about how I'm my own worst enemy sometimes with time, but like, how can I complicate the thing? So like, can it work this way? Like, can it work with the bottom up? Can it work in a line? Can it work stacked? Like, is there a way that and most of the time, no, right? Like, I don't succeed. But that's kind of what makes it interesting, I think. I think I like cups. I use cups a lot in teaching, and I use it as a way to explore ideas on kind of a small scale. Like, there's not a lot at stake, right? Pound and a half of material, a little bit of time. It's a nice way to play around with trying to figure out a new technique, or maybe testing a glaze, or maybe you're going to use a different slip, or like whatever, right? It's just a nice platform to try something out, because it's, you know, it usually takes a few times to get it right, so you don't have a whole lot invested in it. But they're also really wonderful sculptural objects, and they give us lots of moments to create connections, both visually and then as well as, you know, I'm sure we all have a cabinet of cups that we love using, and they're from somebody, an artist we really admire or we followed for a while, or they're from one of our really good friends who we went to school with, or who, you know, and they build these histories around them, and they enter our lives in this really intimate way. And I just think the cup as an object is a very, I'm into it. I don't know. That's my explanation. Sometimes I work with multiple materials. My background is in, my degree is in studio art. My concentrations are ceramics and sculptures, so I do bring some other materials into the work sometimes. This was a series of, I was making these copita sets. So copitas, I didn't know what they were. Somebody asked me to make them. I was like, cool. And then I went and tried to figure out what a copita was, right? After I'd already said I would do it. So it's a specific form for mezcal tasting, which I didn't know. So then I kind of like went into this investigation into like mezcal, and so I did some research, right? some hands-on research. So I made these copita sets for a little bit, which were really fun. I kind of thought about them as like furniture for pots, like a love seat for these two copitas. And they nestle in that routed out groove, so it sort of has like a specific place to set when not in use. So made to be used every day, but you know, I like to think about them as maybe it's, you know, whatever, your kid comes home from college for Christmas, or it's an anniversary, or you see one of your best friends who you hadn't seen in, you know, all year, or we get on the other side of a global pandemic, and, you know, it seems like a good thing to cheers somebody about, right? And then I also think about, I use clay in a more sculptural way. I make some wall work that's not functional at all, because that's like fun to just forget about function for a bit. Like, it doesn't matter what it does, thinking about it conceptually and formally. So I made this series. This is all comes from multiple hikes over the years to Hanging Rock State Park, which most people are familiar, up in Stokes County. My folks live up there now. My grandfather and grandmother are from that area, so I spent a lot of time as a kid in Stokes County. And so Hanging Rock is just a special place for me, and so I made some work about it. This is a series is thinking about the West. Growing up on the East Coast, the West is this really like romantic, idealized space because it's so different than what I was used to. And so living in South Texas gave me the opportunity. The West became a little more accessible. Like you're not really in the West, but you're like halfway there. So I tried to take advantage of that over my years of living there, and I did some traveling around that area, and was really taken with the vastness of that space and the quietness and the color. It's a really interesting landscape. And then this piece is ongoing. I hope to finish it soon. It's a memorial to my grandfather, who was a stonemason by trade. He passed away in late August of 2022. And so for many years now, every time I visited with him, we would have these conversations, and I'd ask him about being 16 and like working in a shipyard welding bolts on battleships and down in Charleston, because he got caught trying to like sneak into the Army. He was like too young, and they were like, dude, you're like, sorry, we appreciate the effort, but like you can't come yet. And so he rolled out and like lived in Charleston and like worked in the shipyard for a while, and then he just did a lot of things. He's the first person that I ever made anything with as a kid. He was a tinkerer, a woodworker, a mason. He's a really cool dude. So we'll get back to that piece at some point, right? Like I'll make a few more pods, and we'll kind of put that piece to bed after a while. But I'm just not quite ready to finish it up yet. So I make these every once in a while. Like I would fly home, visit, hang out. We'd have a conversation. I'd go by to the studio. I'd make a couple pods, throw them in the soda kiln or a wood kiln or whatever I had going on, and then box them up and until the next time. And so I was fortunate enough a few times to be able to install this work in different iterations, but this was the first one and probably still my favorite composition. And my wife and I, we started Good Hope Studios. It's kind of the culmination of us putting our two studio practices together because it makes more sense from a tax standpoint. We still make our own work. Sometimes we work together. We've done some projects together, but like she makes her work, I make my work. We just call it Good Hope Studios because it's just easier on paper. And the land that now my mom and stepdad live on, but that my grandparents live on, is called Good Hope Drive in Stokes County. And so as a little nod to the tradition of pottery studios being named after the road that they're on, we decided to call our studio Good Hope Studios. And then that's a picture of our land out there. So, and now my wife and I were able to pick up part of the land that's adjacent to the family land. So we sort of always, my family's, there's multiple marriages and remarriages, and there's a lot of like kids and things, and so it seemed like we'll just kind of have our own little space, and then that way if something got, weird later on, we would always be able to, we'd be able to access that space, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. So that's a little introduction into me, a little bit about my background, what I'm interested in, and some of the things that I think about while I'm making stuff. Any questions so far? And then I'll kind of switch over to the demo part. Okay.
Your sculpture.
A little louder, please.
I just asked if there's any questions.
A little louder for the rest of the.
Got it. Will do. Sorry.
The sculpture for your grandfather, are they bowls? Have bowls on the wall? Or
Those pods are made, they're made like a bowl, and then I just flip it over and just trim it round, and just stick it on a slab. And then there's a little hole in the back, and you just stick a screw in the wall and hang it. It's like very low tech. Very low tech. All right, I'm gonna move this stuff now. All right, let's see if, maybe, hopefully everything didn't dry out. So I prepped a few, some cup forms. As you can tell, that seems to be kind of my go-to demonstration. Oh, good. So I prepped them. What I'm going to do is some